Thank you, everyone. So I have been warned not to move away from the microphone. So if I start to walk, just wave at me because I need to stand still, and I will do. So yes, talking about cyber resilience, how do you build it? How do you strategize your budgets, your resources? In a time where, as ever with cyber, the threat landscape is always changing. If you're told to state your budget for the fiscal year, how on earth do you do that when you don't know what attacks are around the corner, you don't know what regulations might be coming through? It's the unknown, but you're told to try and prioritise against it. So fear not. This slide is deliberately busy. I think it sort of reflects the mindset of CISOs, CIOs, CTOs, IT management, risk management, who are constantly baffled and bambled by all these different vendors, products, regulations, concerns, audit come along. They're not fun either. You've got your insider risk. You've got stories in the news nearly every day about hacks and attacks. Some people most recently suggesting that the shipping container that crashed into a bridge very recently may have been hacked. There's all sorts of conspiracy theories going on. You cannot open up a newspaper or a news website without hearing about something to do with cyber or a hack or something like that. So I feel your pain if it feels like this. You're not alone. No one actually fully knows what they're doing in cyber. It is a cat and mouse game. It's just a way of how do you map yourself to try and follow these trends, keep the fundamentals there, and then you should be able and be resilient against other things that come along. I do like this clicker. It's probably one of the best ones I've had at an event. So this is a busy slide again. This is what we're doing today. So the agenda, we're going to look at, as I said, the top factors that are driving cybersecurity needs. So how can we find a sensible way to prioritize when your cash, your budget, and your resources, your people, your expertise are stretched, when the threats are shifting daily? What happens and is important one day isn't necessarily important the next day. So there's a survey that we conducted. It was in 2023. It was on all companies with, I think, staff over 1,000 employees across different theatres around the world, and there was no industry that we didn't include. So this is representative of any and every industry here. And appreciate there's a lot of stats here. Just focus on the top two here. So CISOs, what was their sort of top trends and challenges? What are they looking at that's most impactful or most extremely impactful for them? So we've got CISO, CIO, and as you can see actually, the top for the CISO is 78%. Have a look at that bar, see if does it resonate with you a bit? Or are there any areas on there or categories that don't necessarily resonate because you think you've got it all ticked off? Everything's absolutely fine. And also just hands up, have you got cyber insurance? Okay, and has the cost doubled? A bit like car insurance. And has the coverage got less? And seeing some nods. Yes, so cyber insurance is a hot topic. I could spend all day talking about that as well. That's not today. So let's look at these needs, the focuses, the concerns of CIOs, CISOs, and obviously that is reflective of all businesses as well. So 96% of our respondents said that they saw one or more of these particular incident types. So the cloud up there at the top, how many of you are moving to the cloud? How many of you are in the cloud? How many of you still don't really understand how the cloud works, but you just trust that everything goes up there and it's all secure because it's someone else's business to deal with? Yes, so cloud native and the move to the cloud, I think mainly pushed by something called COVID. Everyone suddenly had to work in a way we've not seen before. Very, very quickly, let's just push resources, push everything to the cloud, make it all work. And we did, but did we do it securely? Did we think about who's accessing that data in the cloud? Things like GDPR, which is great fun. Where's that data being sent to? If you work for a company that's global, do you know where that data is stored? How many people can access it? How often? All these great stuff to do with the cloud. We're very lucky to think of it floating up there, but are we really looking at the security of our cloud and protecting it? The other categories you'll see down there, employees stealing information, so penultimate one there. Insider threat is a big thing. I used to specialise it a lot in a previous role in investigations. Happy to speak to anyone about it as well. But this will only increase as people become a bit more concerned that they're not seeing people in the offices because of this new way of working. And they start to think, okay, I can't see all these users. I trust that they're doing what they should be doing, but do you have the tools in place to actually monitor, protect what they can access and ensure they do it correctly? Burying your head in the sand won't actually help. So 4% of our respondents, thankfully we won't name names, said that they hadn't seen any of the incident types observed that we provided in the survey. Perhaps they're not seeing anything because they've got no tools or data to show them these types of events or threats. Would you say that 4% know what they're doing and they're doing it so well that no one's trying to attack them? Or would you say that they're just blind because they've got no insight into what's happening on their network, the extended network, and their employees who are working remotely? So just a bit of fun about burying your head there, but there's a serious message. If you're not seeing anything, that's not right either. I'm not here to scaremonger. I will help with some guidance, but just look at that 4% and think, okay, of all those general categories, hands up here if you get phishing emails probably weekly. Yeah. So 4% of our respondents apparently don't even see phishing emails. So let's look at the kind of the probability of that. Areas of most concern. So up the top there, ransomware. Phishing, as I said, nothing new there. We're all worried about ransomware. Who here is worried about ransomware but doesn't quite know what to do to protect yourself from it? Okay, a bit of a personal question. If you, in your head, you've said yes, that's absolutely fine. Do come and talk to us on our stand. There's a lot you can do for ransomware, and this will actually come out in my conclusion at the end, is keeping the basics, the fundamentals secure. So patch management, vulnerability management, there's all things you can do to help against ransomware. Not saying it's a fix-all, but equally down to phishing as well, spear phishing, you'll hear it, the whaling term, all of this stuff. People get phished, it happens all the time. I think as a cultural piece and as people grow older, they're starting to spot this at work and outside of work. But yes, there are very targeted attacks that are slightly harder to spot. And down the bottom as well, you'll see IoT malware. So I guess most of us here have Alexas at home, probably, and we're working from home. What's that Alexa listening to? Do you have a fridge that texts you when the milk's running low or something like that? Maybe not. Do you have a dishwasher that sends you a message on your phone when it's nearly finished? Some people do. All of that is great, and it's all so exciting for marketing departments and consumerism, but who's actually thinking about the security of those devices? Can they be leveraged for something that's bad? And we'll get to cryptojacking towards the end of the presentation. Just have a think that all this great stuff's happening, but it should be done securely. So how do you secure yourselves with the world and the ever-changing threat landscape when you need to state your budget at the start of the fiscal year? So cybersecurity's priority has doubled. You'll see a drop for the CIOs there. Perhaps they're just relaxing a bit more. They're okay, but the CISOs are still hot on it. They're worried about it. Ultimately, you might argue their neck is on the line. So the priority of cybersecurity and the level of concern against it will keep going up. It will be exponential, especially as businesses are moving new operations into the cloud. There's all apps for sort of everything you could imagine now. Are businesses creating these apps, creating these other sources of data, these data lakes? Are they putting this somewhere that's secure? Is it protected? Who's monitoring the access? Do we know? Do we not know? So again, CISOs will still and always focus on the cybersecurity priority. CIOs may step back a bit. As we saw here, there's a slight step down, not massive, but 3% is a percentage. So perhaps they're starting to think, okay, it's more operational now. The resilience is built into the operation. It's not so much in their role. There's also a suggestion as well that there's a lot of attacks that you hear about on the news, fine. Ashley Madison was one that I'll never get over, because when I worked for a previous company before, we actually had some customers phoning up because their names and email addresses were part of that leak. So when it actually matters to the person, they tend to care a bit more than if it matters to the company, and that's where we need to change that view. So bright orange, keep you all awake. January 25, what will we be thinking about? What will you be budgeting for cybersecurity? Can your budget cope? You might be lucky, you might have a bottomless pit of money that you can keep pulling from, but most of us, that's not the case. So how do you align your priorities to that? How do you state what you're going to focus your resources on for the year or the half year, and how do you maintain that? If you're buying more products from more vendors, you're going to have renewal fees coming in, 3, 5, 10-year cycles. How do you start to plan that and feed your business operations and your budgets into that accordingly? So overall priorities. Good question. What does become a priority if everything's a priority? If you're in charge, if you're a CISO or a risk manager, and you've got different areas of the business saying they've got risks and fires, back to that first slide I had, fires going off with the cloud, there's alerts going off with somewhere else, there's a SOC alerts that they're being flooded, some tuning that's been done has been done wrong, there's loads of false positives, that's a priority, get rid of the false positives, find the true positives. How do you prioritize when it's all just chaotic? And that is cybersecurity. It will always be chaotic. Anyone who says it won't be is probably lying. We're living in a real environment. We are always catching up with the attackers and those thinking of malware, exploit kits and all of that stuff. We are behind them, so we need to keep up with them at best. So top 7 priorities. I popped a cloud there, just for a bit of fun. But yeah, securing the cloud, your apps and your services that you're using in the cloud. Back to my comment at the start, we're all loving talking about the cloud and it's a great thing to say, but if you're using it, are you actually looking at securing it, maintaining it, where it's hosted? Do you just sign the contract and forget about it and someone else's problem? The cloud is a high priority / classed as essential by our survey respondents. Ransomware, fine, we've spoken about that, we all know about that one. User identities for attack and compromise. So user identities is something that could be aligned to the insider threat, but it's also just your data that you hold as your company. How well do you protect it? Do you just have like a firewall in place, identity and access management in place? Do you review any logs? Do you report on suspicious activity? Do you have a 24/7 threat model that's looking at your intel pieces, or are you just looking at it Monday to Friday? Have a think about what your products are doing that you have now. I'm not saying go out and buy lots of products, and I will get to that in a second. It's just more the money you're spending, understanding that money is tight. Look at the products you're using, the tools that you have, and see if they cover off any of these other priorities. So security of your endpoints as well. Who here has an endpoint security tool or service that's running that for them? Do they know that you do? You might do. Okay, a few hands. Fine. Yeah, so you probably do. It's probably inbuilt. You may not be part of the team that's looking at that, but who is actually sifting through that data, monitoring activities and endpoints, looking for anomalies, looking at strange behaviors? And again, how do you define strange? Traditional models may look at the fact that someone logging in on a weekend could flag as an alert and say, oh, that's really strange. It might not be. Some tools, that's their level of strange and the anomaly detection. Other tools, not to name any, but think of the company I'm from, will look at other factors to do with that, like what's the user, have they authenticated? 2FA, I mean, if you're not using 2FA anywhere in any of your cloud apps or any of your services, I think that's something you should do as soon as you get back to the office, because you're exposing yourself unnecessarily when 2FA is already in place. And this was, the top 7 here is from a list of 22 priorities. So we didn't give a massive list. We didn't give an endless list, which you could do. Think of someone in risk management, their risk register is probably very, very long, very scary. We said out of the 22 that we're looking at, which 7 are your priority? And this is what our respondents said. There is a longer piece on this whole research report that we did. It's on our website as well. But these are just sort of the highlights to tie into the session today. So our cyber threat report, someone came over and said they just came to our stand to look at the horse graphic that we had on our laptop. Fine. So me being here today does actually tie in really nicely with the publication of our threat report. So this came out in February. It's an annual report. We use the data points that we collect from our customers, from our RTDMI. So we have an inspection tool that is industry patented. No one else does what we do. The amount of logs and data that it samples per second is incredible. If you're technical, come and talk to us about it if you get excited about stuff like that. So what did we see? What were we talking about in our report? So malware, no surprise, that's gone up by 11%. And we've been doing this year on year. We've been around for 32 years, I believe. So we know our stuff. We're not brand new. We're not a startup. We're not here for a quick win in the industry. We know this stuff. We have seen it day in, day out, and we are global. Encrypted threats. Anyone here not sure what an encrypted threat is? You might not want to raise your hand. Fine. Have a think about it, because that's more than doubled. And again, come and talk to us if you've got any questions. Ransomware, third highest year on record. Woohoo! So it's still working. Ransomware is a good way for them getting their ROI. You do not have to be a hacker to send off a ransomware attack to a company. There are websites on the dark web that you can pay a small amount of money to, and someone as a service, almost like SOC as a service, you can get ransomware as a service, pay a small fee, and they deal with it all for you. It's lovely. It's just very, very good customer satisfaction, and ROI for ransomware is high. It works. People do not always have cyber insurance. People just pay the ransom because they've not got backups. If you're not backing up your backups and you haven't got a separate backup facility, again, that's a fundamental. Get that covered off. This isn't news. I'm not new saying that today about your backups. You should be having that looked at now, because otherwise you'll end up paying the ransomware fee. Cryptojacking, 1 billion. So cryptojacking is fairly new. It's come about with the IoT sphere that we're seeing. It's also come about with people working remotely, more personal devices in people's houses, etc. Cryptojacking is leveraging the power of machines to then do data mining. And I'm not talking about a 12-year-old teenager hacking into one laptop at home. I'm talking about vast estates of compromised machines. Some are corporate, some are personal, that are being used for their power to mine Bitcoin and all sorts of other cryptocurrencies. I think it's incredible. I think it's a very, very good look at how the bad side of the world can use the technology that we have. And back to the Alexa point, yes, your Alexa could be compromised in doing this as well. Please don't go home and just break your Alexas, but just think about how you're securing them. An intrusion attempt, so that's quite a scary number, 240K per second. That's not a typo. That's not a lie. That is what we see. This is what we're reporting. This isn't me just saying it to you. This is our publication that goes out globally. I'm not trying to scare you with these figures. This is what we see. And global ransomware volume per year. If you're at the back, you can see 2021 was a great year. I think a lot of the attackers used lockdown in 2020 to really build up their kits, so then their ransomwares were a bit more hard-hitting, and they were very lucrative off the back of it, with people staying and working remotely. As I said, all these remote satellite workers that you've got, who's patch managing their devices? If they have to be on network to receive updates, do you know if they're off network for a while, but they're being used? What visibility have you got? So it's all really scary, but it's all really good because there's a lot of room for improvement. Just because there's a slight decrease doesn't mean ransomware is going away. It is lucrative. It's fairly easy from the attacker's side, the outset, the cost, etc. It's a service. So SOC as a service or ransomware as a service, pick what you would like, but there's no complaints line for ransomware as a service. If you are attacked with ransomware and you fall victim, you can't phone them up and say, please, please take it off. They'll want their payment and that's it, or it could get worse. Cryptojacking. So I mentioned about that. We have a different animal for that one. Not related, and it is dangerous and it's climbing. So as I said, it's being brought on by the shift and the inclusion of all these IoT devices that are coming into our world. It's preferred. It's actually a preferred method below ransomware, so it's less cost for the attackers. Again, because they don't need any physical kit, they're just compromising existing kits and machine power that exists, leveraging it to do their mining. So cryptojacking is new. The regions that we cover, so APAC, Asia Pacific, Latin America, North America, and Europe, big upticks, especially for Europe. What does that say? How are we concerned? What are we looking at? Look at the scores for November, December. They don't take Christmas holidays. They actually prey on the fact people take Christmas holidays around Thanksgiving, etc., and Christmas in December to advance their attacks. It's not a spray and pray with cryptojacking. It's much more involved, but it still is a low cost. So it's very, very lucrative and it is preferred. I think actually in 2023, we saw that I think 1 in 6 malware hits were to do with cryptojacking. That wasn't seen before, so this is new and it's emerging, and if I come back here next year, that graph will be even higher, and it will be a I told you so sort of moment. Again, how can we talk about this for encrypted threats? So they've doubled again, more scary stats, but it's just to labour the point that this stuff isn't going away. We're not here to just say everything's great, you buy some products and the threat landscape is managed. It will never be fully managed, so you have to remain resilient and become resilient. Look up the definition of resilient if you want to think how you should be, securing your business and your customers and your staff's data. It means you can weather the storm. So no one is fully protected, but at least with some level of resiliency, you are protected to certain types of attack, and only the worst ones will get through or be successful. So again, a big jump. I think it was Asia and then LATAM. Yeah, so Latin America was the highest jump we saw for encrypted threats. Now this will only go up. I think the highest bar, I think that says, September was the biggest. Again, could be to do with time of year. It could be to do with how these encryption threats are, I use the word harvested, how they're created. And it's not as emerging as cryptojacking. Encrypted threats are slightly different, but it's over traffic, genuine HTTPS traffic. And we saw that go up across all of our regions, all of our customers, all of the data points we've got, we saw it going up. So it's legitimate traffic, it's compromised. So again, do your existing tools look for that stuff? Do you know if they do? If you said encrypted threats to them, would they look at you blankly, or would they say, no, we've got you covered, here's some data that you didn't know we had? Just start thinking about the tools that you've got, because, a bit light-hearted humour, when everything is a priority, as I said, nothing is a priority. So if you've got all these, cryptojacking concerns, you wake up in the middle of the night worrying about, cryptojacking or ransomware. If you do, I feel for you, it does happen. But you're trying to prioritize, right? You're this guy at the bottom. You've got this budget. You're stood at work, whether it's at home or the office, and you're starting to think, okay, I've got to spend money on this. I need to do phishing simulation. Great. I've got, a recurring amount for that each month or each year for that company. Then you need, okay, I've got to look at ransomware. What are our protections? Cyber insurance is due. Money can go over there. Oh, we're standing up a new capability in another country. Where's the data going to? Where's the cloud? Where's it actually live? Who's regulating it? You've got audit start knocking on your door. Hello, we'd like to do a half-year review. Oh God, what are our assets? What's our inventory? How do you not turn into that man? I don't know. And I think half of CISOs do look like this behind closed doors. I've met a lot. I know they're all stressed. No one's got it sorted. So we'll keep it lighthearted. There is room for improvement. The B word, budgeting. For resiliency, though, so there's a good purpose for it. The stat at the bottom, I think it was the global average cost of a data breach is about, and apologies, it's in dollars, 4.45 million. And 51% of orgs only plan on increasing the investments when there's been a breach. So you almost, as the person in charge of the budget and the man going mad trying to think about the budget, some CISOs or some in charge may actually let a breach or a low-level phish be successful, because that gets the board's attention, and the board say, have some money, let's throw money at it, fix that problem, I don't want to see it again. That's not right, but unfortunately that is how it works. So try and get ahead of that. The third point is probably one of the most important. They're not listed in order, but keeping the fundamentals covered, patch management, knowing, registering your assets, having inventory, looking at vulnerability cycles. Who's pushing out vulnerability updates to all of your devices? Do devices have to be on network? Do you know if people working remotely are on network or off network? Just start to think about what you've got, and each of your industry, every single person in here, it's different, your priorities, your budget, the attacks you face, but please don't ever think you're too big or too small to be a potential target for phishing, cryptojacking. They don't care what industry you're in. They don't care what job role you've got. They will spray and pray for a certain level of these attacks, and they get lucky, and that's why it works, and that's why we're all in the industry of cybersecurity. So that's the positive side. Methodology, and this is kind of common sense. Think about the current level of concern that you've got about the posture that you're in. Do you know there's a burning issue with USB or removable media not being monitored? Are people stealing data and putting it on a USB and running out the door with it? Do you not have a way of monitoring that? Do you not have a way of monitoring, 2FA requests and what countries they're coming from? If you've seen them from, different countries across Europe, but that employee lives somewhere else, why are you seeing that? Start to look at what you've got and your concerns, really start to evaluate them and place them into a plan, which leads to point 2. Have a level of investment required for this. So how much is it going to cost? Don't just come to an event and buy loads of tools if you're lucky to have the budget. Think about what you've got and the desired level of posture you want. You won't fix this overnight. And then that forms your priority for the rest of this year and next year. So your priorities, look at where there's themes that you related to, and I would hope there's at least one that I've spoken about today. Don't be in that 4% who had their head buried in the sand, thinking everything was fine. Look at an enterprise risk assessment. What do you need? Think about what the risks are, communicate it to the board in dollar values, or pound values, euro values, whatever language they speak. Reputational damage is also a great way to, not scare, but get the board to understand your pain. If you talk about identity and access management, the board, they don't care, right? That's not in their language, so make it financial. Don't be scary, just say this is the risk we're exposed to. And it's actually that, I think it's 36% lack support. So board of directors, yeah, this is interesting. Board of directors are often a bit more business-minded, fine. So if it's all ticking over fine, why do you need more money? We all know cyber departments cost a lot of money. So how are you going to convince them to spend more money or put more resources into your area if they're not understanding the threat landscape, how it changes, and how your resources and your budget need to align? So top areas. If you take a photo of any slides, make it this slide, please, because these are the 3 things you should at least be looking at. Cloud security, ransomware protections, that's not just cyber insurance, that's the after fact. The protections ahead of ransomware, what have you got in place? And your data disciplines. GDPR, I'll bang on about it. There's other regulations for other countries that I cover, so I'm aware of them in my role. Data disciplines is becoming a big thing. In America, they're kind of catching up. They've heard of GDPR, they think it's great, so they're bringing it in. So if you've got offices, data points, if your cloud base is over there, start thinking about that data, because you will have to tell your customers where that data is going to and how it's processed. So data disciplines is core. It covers a lot, but it's very important. Conclusions from the research, conscious of time and everyone's probably starving. Budget decisions being driven by a high risk or an event, which is not what you want. Strengthen your ability to recover. So, okay, no one's perfect. We're not going to fight off every single cyber attack. It's absolutely fine, but have a way of being able to recover. And I'll say it again, your backups, your data, make sure you've not just got one location that's in the same office and things like that, because it does happen. Acts of nature happen and people lose their data backups. And then you're elevating risk management efficacy. So how do you present your risk back to the board? Is it once every year? Because if it is, that needs to change. At least every 6 months needs to be the process you go through to show your risks. It will mirror the fact that the threat landscape is changing, and then you feed that into your conversations and your requests for more budget, more resources, and better protections. What you can do, look up our threat report as well. These are all hyperlinked. So there's things you can do with our product set, our solution set, that will help address some of these features. And if not, download our threat report. I know we had some copies on our table out there, but I think they've all been taken. We should have bought thousands and thousands more. But there's a lot to read in there. It's available online as well. There's an exec summary, 2 pages if you've not got much time. There's a longer version, 17 pages if you've got some more time. And then, of course, you're welcome to reach out with questions, etc. LinkedIn, email, however you want. We're happy to have a conversation with you. So thank you. Thank you for listening.